Welcome to the Divorce Survival Guide podcast, where we have open and honest conversations about co-parenting, separation, divorce, and the hardest question of all, should you stay or should you go? I'm Kate Anthony, your Divorce Survival Guide, and I'm here to help you navigate some of the roughest waters you've ever swum in and answer some of your toughest questions. I've been to hell and back. And now it's my mission in life to help you get to the other side of this process with your sanity and your heart intact. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you had a wonderful Thanksgiving. I know the holiday season can be a real challenge for many of us, and we're really getting down to it now. It can almost be like Thanksgiving is just a teaser for what's to come. So if you're struggling, I'm going to drop the link in the show notes to a blog post that I wrote a few years ago called How to Make the Holidays Not Suck Holy Hell. So check that out and know that I am here rooting for you and offering advice and support in my Facebook group, which you'll also find linked in the show notes. Or you can just go to Facebook and search for a group called Should I Stay or Should I Go? And that's me. There's almost 1,000 women in there right now. And I got to tell you, the support in there for women at any stage of this process, it's not just should you stay or should you go, like any stage of this process, the support in there is unbelievable. These women are so beautiful, and come join us. And we'll get you through the holidays. So speaking of the holidays, are you stressing about money yet? I know I am. But okay, have you checked out Worthy yet? I told you about Worthy last week on the podcast. Worthy is recognized as the premier online auction house for selling diamond jewelry. So if you have a ring sitting in your jewelry box that you can no longer wear, or a necklace that you no longer want to wear, Worthy will get you the best market value, and they'll do it in a personalized and full service auction. So you don't have to stress or worry about any of it. And if you visit worthy.com/the divorce survival guide, you'll get a special holiday offer. You can receive up to a $500 gift card when you sell your ring or jewelry with Worthy on or before December 20th. There are some restrictions that apply, so just be sure to go to worthy.com/the divorce survival guide and you'll get all of the details. Look, the bottom line is, if you have jewelry sitting around that you no longer want or can wear, you may as well get the most out of it and ease the pressure of holiday spending. Right? Right. Okay, so on to today's episode. Today's guest is Jonathon Aslay, and Jonathon is America's leading midlife dating coach. But today, Jonathon joins me to discuss the importance of learning how to love yourself. After losing his 19-year-old son, Connor, in 2018, Jonathon's grief led him on a soul-searching inner journey where he became aware of an often overlooked dimension of the dating conversation. And he realized that the process of dating reveals the most common emotional health issue faced by many singles seeking a partner, a distressing lack of self-worth, self-regard, and self-love. Ain't that the fucking truth? So today, Jonathon's on a mission of encouraging both men and women to fully love themselves. And he has a new book out. It's called What the Heck is Self-Love Anyway? And it's packed with fun, engaging, spiritual, and personal growth practices. And Jonathon also has a dynamic midlife love mastery mentorship program, which inspires hundreds of people daily around the world. But today, Jonathon and I are really focusing our conversation on self-love and how he came down to this sort of focused point after his divorce and through the death of his son. So, without further ado, here is Jonathon Aslay. Jonathon, thank you so much for coming on to the Divorce Survival Guide podcast and sharing your story and wealth of information. I'm super excited to have you here.
Well, thank you so much. I'm excited to be a part of this as well.
So you have said to me,
Yeah,
truly, like 5 minutes ago, you said that your divorce was really your catalyst to huge change in your life, and that it
Yeah.
actually prepared you for dealing with even greater hardships down the line, which we'll get to. Um,
Yeah.
so let's talk about that. Let's talk, let's talk about the
Sure.
divorce. Isn't that fun? Um,
Well, wait, isn't this a divorce survival guide?
yeah, exactly. I know, right? Yes, bingo. Tell me about your marriage, your divorce, and how that all unfolded for you.
Yeah, thank you. So, it's interesting as you were asking me the question, I was thinking about in my 20s, or not even in my 20s, growing up, I was programmed. I was part of the baby boom generation. So, my parents were part of that World War II generation, if you will.
Yeah.
And then there was this program, after high school, you're going to go to college. And after college, you're going to get a really good job. And after you get a really good job, you're going to meet a girl. And when you meet a girl, you're going to get married, you're going to buy a house and start a family.
Right.
And I followed that to a T. I mean, I went to college. About 5 years later, I met someone, and we then got married 2 years later, and then we bought a house 2 years later, and had kids 2 years after that. And I
The
followed that
American
model.
dream. It's the
Yeah.
American dream, Jonathan. You did it right.
Well, certainly, I would say that was then, because I don't think the same dream exists, and we can get into that for a second.
Yeah.
But I followed it, and it was about 10 years into the marriage, I realized that my blueprint collided with the reality that I married someone that didn't love me.
Mm.
I shouldn't say didn't love me. We were misaligned in
Yeah.
so many different ways. I mean,
Yep.
we do
Yep.
care for each other and such, um, but I didn't even know who I was when I got married. Even though I was
Ha-
27 when I met her, I was 29. I was emotionally a 15-year-old. And I
Yeah.
can say this after the fact. It was, because you could have never told me then.
Right.
Uh, but I had no clue who I was, what I was all about, what was I even doing. I was very ego driven, and certainly during the divorce, well, in my particular case, there was a ton of contention between us,
Yeah.
and it's sad. And if someone had told me this in advance, and I think about this, I you know, I would love to have heard some advice beforehand, like some really good advice.
Mm.
You got to do that before you ever get married.
Right. Right.
Like,
Yeah.
yeah,
Absolutely.
because
I
I
know.
so wasn't prepared for
Yeah.
any of it.
It's interesting that, I remember talking to a friend of mine who was getting married, and she and her husband, her fiance, were going through some of the most intense premarital counseling that I had
Mm,
ever seen. And she was talking to me about the questions that they were grappling with and how hard it was. And I thought, oh my God, I wish everyone had to do this. It
yeah,
was, there was so much values-based thinking and all of that, but literally, like, what are you going to do if this happens? What will be your response if this happens? And, not that we can predict anything specifically, of course, but
yeah.
just to have God, we get married so blindly. I mean,
Well, we did. Well,
and so young.
yeah, my wife and I did a little bit of premarital counseling, but I realized then we would have just said whatever we had to say because we weren't,
Right.
like we weren't really, there was an awareness piece that didn't exist at
Yeah.
that stage of my life. So, it's no wonder divorce, and even though they say the divorce rate is 50%, I really believe that if you added the breakup rates of a relationship, it's almost 95%,
Right. Right.
Um,
If you count the
yeah,
ones that didn't get married.
yeah,
Right.
exactly. You got
Yeah,
to
totally.
add that into the equation.
Right.
Uh, so it's because through relationships, we actually learn a lot about ourselves. And our first go around, we're not even aware that we can learn about ourselves.
Yeah.
Uh, and and because now that I'm divorced and I've spoken to so many divorced people, they all say the same thing. I've now learned what I don't. I now learned what I want by what I didn't want.
Yeah.
So it was through the relationship itself, and for many others thereafter, have I gotten a better sense of who I am.
Yeah. And I'm going to push back on the, now that I know what I want because I know what I don't want thing.
Yeah.
I think that's a little bit of a trap. I think there's so much more depth and nuance to that, right? Because if you're only going to go for not the last thing,
Yeah.
then the last thing still has that power and control over you, right? And
Yeah.
what resists persists. So
Well,
what we
it's
resist.
interesting. By the way, since I'm a dating coach for women professionally, one of the things I do is help them with profiles. And when I see a profile that says, I don't want any cheaters and liars and
Oh
scumbags and
boy.
blah, blah, blah. And I'm like,
Guess what you're gonna
really?
guess what you're gonna attract.
Correct, exactly. And I'm like, really? It's going to work on those people? I mean, come on.
Exactly. It's
So
basically like a checker flag saying like enter
yeah.
here.
Well, it's a checker flag that I'm wounded and I haven't healed.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. And so I'm a receptacle actually for that,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
And that's right. So it's not it's the doing the healing and the work on ourselves to figure out what the fuck happened,
Well,
right?
yeah,
And,
because I'll share with. Oh, I was going to say.
yeah, go.
Well, so for your audience listening, I after turning 40, going through a divorce, I lost my $250,000 a year job. A few years later, the market crashed, wiped me out of a 7-figure net worth, not a 5-figure, not a 6-figure, a 7-figure net worth
Oh,
got wiped out. And I was in emotional despair. And it was a challenge because I'm also, dealing with alimony and child support and family court and all this stuff within that period of time.
oh my God.
And I'm going to be honest. I was a, I was so, I was going to say the word a dick.
You can.
Um,
You can.
but
We're
I
basic.
was completely unconscious and I was very selfish.
Mm.
And but when I look back now, I was selfish because I was in such fear because my world collapsed when I lost my
Sure.
$250,000 job. I lost my marriage. I lost all my money. My whole identity was gone. And so my behavior, I'm not proud of it, but was rather unconscious.
Mm-hmm.
And it took me about 5 or 6 years to really get into a place where I started to see that I created all this, that this was all my doing, and I could learn how to respond instead of react to life. And little by little, I began to heal, and I began to heal my relationship with my ex-spouse, and I began to heal my relationship with not heal my relationship with my children, appreciate my relationship with my children. Because
Yeah.
for that first 5 years, I was like I don't want to say limbo, but I was just unconscious.
Yeah. And so what got you out of that? Like what got you out of that?
Well,
I guess
I
that's-
tell the story from my professional perspective. I was actually addicted to online dating that
oh,
first year, and
yeah.
I went on over 100 internet dates.
It's fun the first year. And then
Yeah, yeah,
but right, it's like, oh my God, I'm
yeah,
appreciated. People think I'm sexy. People
yeah,
think I'm hot. People
yeah,
want a piece of me or whatever, right? There's like
yeah.
the
I was getting so much
attention.
action, I couldn't believe
Oh my God, the
it.
attention is intoxicating.
Yeah. So
Absolutely.
I realized though I would go out with someone, really nice woman. We'd have a really nice time, but something wasn't right. I went out on another one, really nice woman, really nice time. Something wasn't right, over and over again. And as I shared, I had over 100 internet dates. And I also realized that the something right wasn't me.
Mm-hmm.
And right at that time, the movie The Secret came out.
Mm-hmm.
And interestingly enough, I was very aware of personal development, self help, spirituality. That when I was in my 20s, it was called metaphysics.
Right.
And so the movie The Secret, it coming out reignited what was already began in me before I met my wife. And that was a personal development, self help, and spiritual practice. And at
So
that point,
I'm
go
sorry to
ahead.
interrupt, but had you
No, go ahead.
given that up in your marriage? Was that a part of yourself that you abandoned in your marriage?
It's interesting that you bring this up because I didn't consciously do it because of her. I mean, in other words, as I think
Yeah.
back, it wasn't like, oh, she made me do anything. It
No,
just,
no, but
I actually started as a way to meet women.
so then you met one, you were like, all right, well, what do I
Yeah, but I
I'm
didn't
done.
meet a woman that was into the same thing was the problem.
That's hilarious.
So only because she had no awareness around it, I had just gotten a taste of personal development. Other than I bought Tony Robbins CDs like 30 years ago from an infomercial. Um, and by the way, and they were still in a box until I got divorced.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, and that's when I began, like the movie The Secret, What the Bleep, and then books, Marianne Williamson, Wayne Dyer, Neil Donald Walsh, and just to name a few.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the beginning of what started to transform me from living life from an egoic place and operating from a place of how can I see and experience life through the eyes of love?
Mm.
And that's where I'm at in my journey right now is how can I love myself and everyone else um, as a path to just be an extension of love.
So, you're talking about, my listeners and my audience is a lot of women, right? Who
Okay.
are married to or divorcing men who they don't feel connected to, who don't have this sort of connection spiritually or to personal development, right?
Yes.
It's such a missing for them. I mean, it really
Yeah.
is, right? So what would you say to women who are with men who are, I mean, sort of, it sounds like you weren't, it's not that you were like that because you actually had access, right? You just had, it was a part of yourself that you had like a path you had started down and then, took
Yeah,
some
I
time
got
off
detoured.
from.
I
Yeah, you
got
got
detoured.
detoured, which is, what we do in adulthood, right? All
Yeah,
the
yeah.
time. Adulthood is a detour.
Exactly.
Um,
That's true.
and so what would you say to these women who are on a spiritual path or are really invested in personal development, who are married to people who are just not?
So this is going to be really hard for everyone to hear
Mm-hmm.
because while I believe from a society and traditional perspective, we are conditioned to stay in a relationship that's just not either it's not serving a higher purpose or it's toxic on some level.
Yeah.
And we are conditioned to stay and make it work out and go to therapy. And many people sacrifice their entire lives, if you will, on a premise that you can abandon today. And that is this experience called life, this thing that we get to live is our experience first. It's our
Mm-hmm.
experience first.
Amen.
Just like, the idea of when you have to put the oxygen mask when the, cabin pressure changes in the plane, it's putting the oxygen mask on yourself first. And it's saying it's absolutely okay to end a relationship that doesn't serve either one of us.
Yep.
And that there are definite ways to either coexist or exist, but not together,
Yep.
whether it's divorce, separation, or whatnot. And to begin a journey of experience this life on your terms, because
Yes.
each one of us is in charge of our own destiny.
Mm-hmm.
And just because we made a commitment once, it's an agreement, actually, not a commitment, to stay until it no longer serves us. And if it
Right.
no longer serves if it doesn't serve one of us, it doesn't serve both of us.
And I love what just popped into my head is like the agreement that we make is, until death do us part, right?
Yeah.
And I like to look at that as my soul died in my marriage,
Yeah.
right? When my soul was dead, I mean not literally, but certainly very figuratively, there was a part of me that died in my marriage. It was the greatest gift to myself to leave my marriage. And to my ex, by the way.
Yeah.
And I talk about this a lot, is that, when I realized that we didn't like each other very much and that he deserved to be with someone who liked him.
Yeah.
As
Yeah.
much as I deserve to be with someone who liked me.
Yeah.
And that, like, what would be possible? And that if we were together and we brought out the absolute worst in each other, what would be possible from a parenting perspective if we were with people who brought out the best in us, right? Or just we're not with people who brought out the worst in us.
Well, sadly, most people aren't trained at good communication skills.
Yes.
The reason why there's any type of significant friction or animosity, it's because most humans haven't learned how to communicate their feelings in a way that's seen, heard, and understood, and not from an egoic place, from a place of love.
Yep.
So, but going back to you asking for the divorce was a blessing for you and a blessing for him.
Mm-hmm.
I think back to my experience, I actually knew on some level I was going to get divorced on May 24th, 17, because I figured I will get divorced when I was 18 years old. And I knew that literally short into the marriage.
Uh-huh.
And it took her nerve to end the relationship 12 years before my son did turn 18.
Mm.
And I'm grateful because that gave me 6 more years to figure out who I was.
Yeah.
I've been spending this whole time trying to figure out, who am I?
Yeah.
And she did that for me. And I'm grateful for that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I would have stayed out of obligation.
And I think so many men do. I think so many men stay because, out of obligation. And it's fine. Right?
Yeah.
It's fine. I think it's women that get that itch that, like, no, it's not enough, right? A lot of men will stay because, they're not happy, but like, whatever.
Yeah.
Well,
men are actually nesters.
Yeah.
People don't realize that women are often called men commitment phobic, but we're nesters. Once we're in, we don't go anywhere usually.
Exactly. Once you're in, you are in.
Now, that doesn't mean they don't go anywhere for maybe a sexual experience, but that's a whole nother conversation. But men aren't going anywhere. And so, and I always say women are the container of the heart of the relationship.
Yeah.
So if that, that's a whole nother conversation.
Well, no, I'm curious about that. So let's go down that path for a minute. So what do you mean by that?
Well, if men are nesters, we're also good at we're here to take direction. So when I say the heart, if you want to have an emotional connection with your spouse, you lead the charge.
Yeah.
If unless we're completely selfish, we're going to want to, we want to make you happy most of the time. But you see, oftentimes women are waiting for men to take the lead. This whole thing in the dating realm is all about men taking the lead. And I'm like, ladies, you're giving the job to the wrong person. And that's true in every aspect of a relationship. A woman is the leader.
So,
generally speaking, not as an absolute.
Right. And so, and it's really interesting because then, going back to communication, right, which is that, that I know so many women that are like, I just want an emotional connection. And their husbands are like, I don't get it, because that's a very sort of complex and yet also very vague thing to say, right? What does that mean to you? What is an emotional connection to you? Because a guy may be like, well, I feel emotionally connected to you.
Hey guys, I want to take a quick break here because I want to tell you about a co-parenting app that I have been testing out and I absolutely love. The FAIR app, it's FAYR, is the easiest, most intuitive, and conflict-diffusing co-parenting app on the market. And I am so excited to be partnering with FAIR on the podcast today. This app is so cool, not just because it's app-based, so it's always at your fingertips, and not just because it's made with the user experience in mind, so it's super pretty and intuitive, but really because of all that you can do with it. So here's a sampling of some of the things that you can do on the FAIR app. There's a time-sharing calendar, so you can track custody. You can exchange days and never forget special events like soccer games or birthday parties. There's documentable text messaging so that If you communicate through the app, it stores everything for you. There's an expense tracker, so you can monitor expenses, upload receipts, and just generally track all of the kids' spending. All of the kid spending. But here's my favorite part. FAIR has a GPS check-in that is a court verifiable way to document your presence at all GPS verified locations. What this means is that no one can accuse you of not being where you said you'd be with your kids because the app will prove that you were there. How cool is that for high conflict cases? There's a monthly parenting report that tells you unequivocally what percentage of custody you had that month, along with tons of other things. There's a private journal to take notes, add photos, and screenshots. You guys are constantly asking me how to store the screenshots that you take. Here it is. There's also a file vault so you can keep all your records. You can export all of your records. And there's a Spanish version of the app as well. So the best part about this amazing app is that they've come on as a sponsor of the Divorce Survival Guide podcast. And as a loyal listener, they are offering you 20% off of your subscription. So here's what you got to do. You got to go to befair.com, BEFAYR.com. When you subscribe, use the code KAnthony. That's me, my first initial and last name, and you'll get 20% off. Then you're going to download the FAIR app from the App Store or Google Play right there on the website, and your life will immediately become 150% easier. Now, of course, if you can't remember all this, you know it's all in the show notes. What you need to remember is that you can lose the he said, she said, and be the best parent that you can be. Be FAIR, FAYR. Okay, now let's get back to our episode.
What is an emotional connection to you?
Women often say to me two things. I want more emotional connection, or I want more commitment from my guy. This is in the dating realm. And I'm like, okay, what does that mean to you? And they are like, blah. And I go, what does that mean to you? They actually just repeat, I just want more emotional connection. Right. And so I'm like, if you can't describe it, then how do you even know that you have it?
Right.
And you start by leading by example. And by the way, for the ladies listening here, and I know you all think you're really good communicators, but watch the show Couples Therapy on Showtime. It's couples therapy, and the women communicate their feelings so poorly.
Right.
Compared to the men, actually.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that generally speaking, human beings are terrible at this. And as you said, communication is a skill. This is a skill that I personally, have spent years teaching in Fortune 500 companies and to top executives of Fortune 500 companies. And literally this is a skill that we don't have. And, when I teach it to my clients and in my programs, it's the same. It's the same as what I teach in Fortune 500, except it's a little more, heart-centered, right?
Yeah.
But we literally don't know how to put words to the things that we need in a way that the other person can hear it. Because it's not just about what we say and how we say it. It's how it is received by the other person. And if our, what's that famous NLP saying that the meaning of any piece of communication is the response that you get, right? If you're not getting the response that you're looking for, you're not communicating in a way that your partner can understand. And that's on you. That's your job.
Well, the other thing I want to add to that is the recognition of context, because you could be saying the color blue to your partner.
Yes.
And he goes, no, that's royal blue. And you're like, no, that's blank, whatever blue. And so if you're not sharing even the same context, you could be communicating something that still isn't received because their version of what you say in their interpretation is different.
Yes.
And by the way, I'm sure you're familiar. Well, maybe you're not, but the book Nonviolent Communication by Marshall Rosenberg.
Yeah, of course.
I wished it was titled Compassionate Communication.
Yes, because it is. And yes. And again, the not that is that, right? So people hear that and they're like, well, I'm not violent.
Yeah.
Right? My husband's not violent. Well, that's not what we're talking about here, right? We're talking about compassion.
Yeah. It's a poorly titled book, but a well written book to begin to learn the tools to communicate in a way that you actually become heard.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, so let's get back to your journey. So
Okay.
you got divorced, and then you somehow found your way back to this personal development stuff, right? You watched the movie The Secret and you were
Yeah.
like, oh my God, there's that thing that I lost along the way.
Yeah. And then I became prior to becoming a dating coach in 2009, I had dated a very well known internet marketer who was a coach.
Uh-huh.
And I got to live in her world for 6 months.
It's great. You're going to
And
have to
so,
tell me later who that is.
okay, well, that experience, so after we ended our relationship, I was dating heavily.
Mhm.
People just asked me advice. After a while, women just would ask me advice.
Mm.
Like women I weren't dating, but we'd become friends, and they just asked me dating advice. And so everyone said, "Well, you got to write a book about online dating." And this was back in like 2008.
Mhm.
And so in 2009, I wrote a little cheesy ebook, and I learned through how she marketed. I started my own website and everything and sold it. And and it and what it did was it turned somehow someone heard someone saw my website, wanted me to be on their radio show, and then someone wanted me to be on audition for a TV show. I started to become popular just because of this ebook I wrote
Yeah.
10 years ago. So what happened was getting into the coaching industry, I began to meet people in the personal development realm. I began to
Mhm.
meet people in the self-help and even the spiritual realm, like a Marianne Williamson or someone like that.
Mhm.
And I was like eating it up. I was like, I just want more and I just want
Yeah.
more because I could feel it feeding my soul on the inside.
Mhm. Yeah. So, I mean, it does, right?
Yeah.
I just got this image popped into my head of just like your soil being watered,
Mm.
like this aspect of you that was already, so I'm going to coach mode, but when I get a hit like that, I have to blurt it. That this
Yeah.
aspect of you, these seeds that you had planted so long ago, right? And the vines are growing and you just start watering them and watering them and watering them, and they take root and they grow, right?
It's the best way to explain it. And it's
Yeah.
like a tree. It doesn't happen overnight. It takes a
Right.
lot of watering, a lot of sunshine, toil, you know, stirring up the earth, so to speak.
Yeah.
And that's how a plant grows. And that's the way our heart grows. It doesn't happen overnight. It doesn't happen by listening to one course or this or that. It's a daily practice to invest in oneself, because that daily practice of investing oneself begins to strengthen us from the inside out. And so we can handle, even though I wasn't prepared when I got a divorce, I felt like, or now I feel more prepared for anything
Yeah.
because of that daily practice. It's a lot better than watching the Kardashians in my book.
Right?
Yeah.
I've never watched them, by the
Oh,
way.
good for
Never.
you.
Not one
Neither
time.
have I.
Not one time. I watch a lot of Dateline though. That's my
Yeah.
that's my guilty
That's
pleasure.
your drug of choice.
It's sort of yeah, it is. I don't drink. I don't do drugs. I don't.
God, you're boring.
I know, so boring. I'm so boring. I know a
I'm kidding.
lot about serial killers and murderers though. So that's
Good to
very
know.
exciting.
Good to know.
Having this, I love the image of the tree too, right? This is
Yeah.
something that this is an image that I use all the time in my work, right? That our job is to become so have our roots so deeply planted.
Yeah.
That I actually have a program called Rooted for just
Oh,
this reason,
cool.
that to have our roots so deeply planted that, like the strongest and the biggest oak tree there is, that no matter which way the wind blows, we're still standing, and our branches may bend, and we're going to feel it, but if our roots are deep, we're not going to get pulled over by it,
Yeah.
and knocked down. And you have actually had probably the most extreme case
Yeah.
of wind blowing and not getting knocked over, which I just, so you want to tell that part of your story? Yeah.
Sure. So 15 months ago, I lost my 19-year-old son. And I'm sure any parent listening or any person could appreciate that for a parent, our greatest nightmare from the day they're born is something happening to our children.
Yeah.
And like every parent, I think I literally every day they're alive, I spent some tiny bit of time in worry.
Sure.
So
You do. You do.
and
Absolutely.
and the thing I feared most happened. The thing I feared most happened. And I thought it would take me down the rabbit hole of never coming back. I always
Yeah.
thought that if something happened to my kids, I'd be gone. I'd be,
Yeah.
forget it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and because, as I shared with your audience, that I've been doing this personal development practice for almost 15 years now. Not quite 15 years, excuse me, probably about 10 years. This daily practice of investing and nurturing my own heart prepared me, which I didn't anticipate, but as I can reflect back now, prepared me for the emotional trauma
Mm.
that happens when we lose a child. And so I made a choice. I said it was a weekend. I don't want to grieve with suffering. I'm going to grieve with love.
Yeah. That's gorgeous.
And
Look
I
at that.
know this work that I did
Mm.
beforehand prepared me for this. And so it's the same. And even though I remember I shared earlier when I was losing my job and all that, I wasn't doing the work. But as I began the work, when other negative things happened, I felt more prepared. I felt prepared. Anytime things would take me down, I wouldn't stay down. I'd get back up so much quicker,
Yeah.
emotionally speaking,
Yeah.
because of doing the inner work.
Yep. And that's, first of all, that is, I hate to say it's powerful and it's right because it's the loss of your child and it's
Yeah.
devastating, right?
Yeah.
But it is also powerful and it's a testament to the work, right? And it's not about
Yeah.
the fact that you didn't grieve at all,
No. I
right?
mean,
It's
believe me,
about
I still cry.
the fact that you were at choice about how you chose to grieve, right?
Yes.
And that's choice is it's a tricky thing. Like we talk, well, everyone has a choice and you can choose this and you can choose that, and I'm fully aware, right? I'm a very I'm aware of my privilege and what choices I have that others don't have, right? And so
Mm.
to say that everybody has the same access to choice, I think is bullshit, and irresponsible. And there are certain things that we do have choice over. And you having access to be able to
Mm.
choose how to grieve, is just such a powerful example of that, I think.
Thank you.
Yeah, really,
I
really.
actually just got asked to write a chapter in a book, and I think I'm going to share this part of the story in that chapter because I believe that whether we're grieving the loss of a child, loss of a parent, a loss of a loved one, maybe a loss of a job, or maybe it's a marriage,
Mm-hmm.
the work we do for ourselves prepares us for this because a divorce is an unraveling of one's former tapestry, and
Mm,
that takes its toll. No different, and I'm going to say no different than any other type of loss. And if one chooses, even before a divorce, to begin the work now, you're much more prepared for
yeah.
when that happens.
And just to piggyback off of that a little bit, when I have a program called Should I Stay or Should I Go? And the entire first month, it's a 3-month program, and the entire first month is about that. The entire
Yeah.
first month is about deepening those roots, planting those roots so fucking deep, and and really nurturing and tending that aspect, because I don't think you can make this decision without having done that work first.
Yep.
right? So that when it comes time, and like you said, when it comes time to make the decision or the decision is made for you, you are emotionally prepared for whatever comes along with it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm, powerful stuff.
Thank you.
Powerful, powerful, beautiful, hard
Yeah.
stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
So where are you now? So you're still obviously grieving. This was not
Yeah.
very long ago. And how would you say that this experience has changed you, or has it?
Well, first, I'm very blessed. I mean, this, though I lost my child, and I'd actually lost my mom 6 months before that, and other things had happened. I'm a very blessed man.
Mm-hmm.
And I say that because I choose to focus on my blessings every day, as corny as that sounds. I don't even think of gratitude, think of being blessed, and then I feel grateful within that emotion.
Mm.
Um, Connor's passing gave me the catalyst to write a book, and I published a book 9 months to the day after he passed.
Wow.
Just got in, started writing, and it was a book that I kind of already began on one direction, but I wanted to infuse him in this book. So the book is called "What the Heck Is Self-Love Anyway?"
Mm-hmm.
And the book is partly my journey, as I shared with the audience, of my personal development beginnings and now where it's at. But the book is an invitation to learn how to love oneself by actually giving tools to practice things on a daily basis. And so it walks you through a variety of tools to begin the practice of loving oneself. And at the end, I take you through my library of work.
Mm.
And I invite people to read the books I've read or go to the workshops I've gone to. And for those that are relatively new to personal development, what a great start.
Yeah.
For those that aren't, I can share with you that it's a unique point of view of wisdom, and
Mm-hmm.
I've gotten really great reviews from it. So I'm very grateful from it. And that came from that experience.
Mm.
And this is how I honor my son. And, I just want to say to your audience, I'm in a good place. It
Mm.
took a long time to get there. I went through a lot of suffering. I paid some dues. And, being a divorced man, I have a great relationship with my other son. I have a great relationship with my kids, a great relationship with my ex, because I began the work and she had done her own work as well that prepared us
Mm.
to be in a good spot.
Oh, that's great. Yes. That's so important, right? Because it really does. Both people kind of need to get on
Yeah.
board, right? Jonathan, what would you say to the men who are listening who may be sort of at the beginning of this journey, who may be dipping a toe into the personal development sphere, and maybe like a little frightened of it, if I'm being honest, right?
Yeah. So I think first is to probably recognize that if you're interested in personal development, something's gnawing at you anyway. Something's
Mm-hmm.
coming up. And
Mm-hmm.
so if you know that it's actually for a reason, then that should give you enough courage to jump in.
Right.
My invitation is to explore who you are in every facet of our being, because we're only on this planet for a short time, and it's our life. As I said earlier, I think of it, live it like you were a spaceman. That's
As if
just
you were
popped in my head.
what?
Well, an astronaut, I was just thinking of an astronaut in space. Just
Yeah.
experience it like it's all around you.
Yeah.
And you can see from above and see below and all those sorts of things. So dive in. The water's fine, and you come out like like you came out of a jacuzzi, all warm and fuzzy.
And I also, there's something that again just popped into my head, is this idea that I think a lot of men think that personal development is like a chick thing, or it makes you somehow less of a man, right? It's not like a manly thing. And what would you say to those guys?
Well, I think there's a misrepresentation because it's really more the spiritual practice. I say
Mhm,
personal development, self-help, spirituality.
mhm.
Spirituality has an air of woo-woo with it,
Yeah.
that it's somehow mystical, and because it's mystical, men are more linear and need to be all logical and whatnot.
Uh-huh.
Um, Here's the thing: just redirect the word spirit and think of the word self.
Mhm.
So this is a self exploration. It's an exploration in who you are, and the benefit of figuring out who you are is you become 10 times more masculine and
Yes.
more. I don't want to use the word manly, just
No, but it's
inner man.
yeah. And I think that there's something about the duality, right, of the feminine and the masculine, because we all have both in us, right?
Yes.
And I think that the personal development aspect is maybe a dive into the more feminine, right? But I think that as you expand your capacity to be with or to inhabit one, so you expand the capacity of the other.
Yeah.
So just from a personal perspective, I find a man who is in touch with his feminine side and who is personally developed and all of that to be so much hotter, so much
So
sexier.
okay, I'd like to make a correction because
Okay.
to a man, kind of what you said is a little bit of a turnoff. So guys, rather than thinking of it as you getting in touch with your feminine side, I'd rather have you reframe it as I'm getting in touch with my heart.
Yeah.
I'm getting in touch with my loving, how I can love, how I have been loved by my mother and father, how I love my children, how I can be in my loving. And rather than think of it, I'm in my masculine and my feminine, just think of how you can be in your heart.
Mm, that's beautiful. It's
Thank
beautiful.
you.
I love it. Jonathan,
Oh,
thank
wow.
you. So, yeah.
Yeah.
What was that?
No, I'll tell you later.
Okay. Well, I just want to thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story and your wisdom. Do you have any parting words, and where can people find you?
Sure. Well, Kate, thank you so much. I love the conversational style interview. You are fantastic. My parting words, as corny as it sounds, it's loving yourself.
Yeah.
My invitation for you is to begin, if you haven't already, begin a journey of loving yourself, because that is the antidote to everything. And
Mm,
it's the antidote to chaos, and it's also it's the not vaccination, injection of happiness.
hmm.
Yeah. And where you can find me, well, my book is called What the Heck is Self Love Anyway? I don't know if we'll have a link to my website by the podcast or not.
Oh, yeah. We'll
I,
have show notes, everything in the show notes, always
okay, good.
everything in the show notes. Yep. Yep. You'll
Yeah,
find it
so
there.
it'll take you to my website. I've even got a free chapter of my book for you, and you can Google me, and I've got a YouTube channel and everything else.
Excellent. Excellent. Jonathan, thank you so much. It's been such an amazing pleasure to have this conversation with you. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Divorce Survival Guide podcast. If you like what you hear, head on over to Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen in and leave me a review. And don't forget to follow me on Instagram at the Divorce Survival Guide. I'll see you next time, and until then, remember, you, my love, deserve to be happy.